Hi guys, I thought I would do today an introduction to stamping. So this is going to be a really early stages of stamping video for those that have been sending me messages about stamping and asking just the introductory basics. It's easy to forget that there's lots of people just coming into crafting who are very new to it and just experimenting with all the different crafts that are on the market. So I often forget actually that lots of you want to see these early stage videos, these very beginner videos. So I thought I would take the time now to just show you some of the stamping basics. So what I've got here are some basic inks. So I've got the Memento inks here. I do love these, they're just fantastic dye ink pad. I've got them in the mini form, the teardrop form, and I've got them in the large form. Now what I like to remind people is that it doesn't matter on the size of the ink pad that you're having as to the size of the stamp, because the important thing is that you actually move the stamp around. You move the ink pad around the stamp, okay? So even if you've got a tiny little ink pad like this, but a really large stamp to cover, you don't have to go out and buy the large pads. You can use the small ones, okay? So that's something that I remind people quite regularly in the shop who worry that you need a really large pad when you've got a larger size stamp. You don't have to. You can just bring the ink pad to the stamp and stamp all around it to give it that coverage, okay? So another important tip then is to make sure that when you are inking up the stamp that you do go over more than once, okay? So I'm going to show you that in a second just so that you can get the idea of what I'm trying to say and why it's so important as well. So the other things we've got here is just some plain white card. Smooth white card is best for stamping, so any smooth white card is great for stamping on. I've got some stamping blocks here, but I've also got here a stamping platform. Now this particular stamping platform, I can't remember the name or the brand, and it doesn't have it on it, but I do have this one. I also have the Tonic Studios stamping platform. They work in similar ways, so I'm just going to show you with this one how you can use a stamping platform and why they're a great tool to have if you really get into your stamping. So we've just got a couple of different stamp options here. Now some people, when they come into the shop, they talk about the wooden block stamps. Now they are still on the market. There's a few companies that still make wooden block stamps, but they're very rare now. You usually find them on an acetate sheet like this. So these are the Imagine Design Create stamps. These were launched back in 2017. We did a great range of stamps. Myself, Claire and John, we designed lots of different stamps. It's something that we hope to go back to again one day, but at the moment there's so much going on. We haven't been launching any stamps recently. So these are some of the old designs from 2017. There's lots on the website, devonartsupplies.co.uk. You'll find the full range of Imagine Design Create stamps on there. But essentially they come on an acetate sheet, and you peel off the acetate sheet at the back, and that will then show you all of the little stamps that you've got. So they're all individual. So you see where each one is separated out, those are all individual stamps, okay? So where you see the black, that's going to be a solid shape. Where you see the outline, just a simple black line, that's going to be just the outline that you get that gets inked. Where you've got the lines, obviously it's going to be the lines. And where you see the clear see-through, that's going to be the colour that you're stamping onto. So if you're stamping onto white, it's going to shine through as white. If you're stamping onto black, it's going to shine through as black. So make sure you use like a white or a silver, okay? So whatever the solid black is on the stamp design, that is what you're going to be stamping essentially, okay? So if I just peel one of these off just to start with, I'm going to peel this square off here. And I'm just going to start by putting it onto a block. Now you'll get lots of different block designs. Some are handy, they have these lines so you can line them up and get it nice and straight. Some will be rocker blocks. There's lots of different designs. It's important to just go for whatever design and stamp block that you like. So do test them out and see what you like. But I do recommend these plain blocks here because they're just brilliant for the job. And then I'm going to show you what I mean in terms of stamping with the ink. So I like to take my ink pad to the stamp. Some people like to take their block and ink and stamp to the ink, okay? I wouldn't say there's a right and a wrong way to do it because different people do it in different ways, but I like to be in control with the ink and I like to move the ink pad over the stamp, okay? So it's important that your coverage is constantly moving around so you're getting a good coverage on the stamp. All right, it's not so important with the simple line ones like this, but when you're doing solid large shapes, that is a really important thing to remember. So when we're pressing, we're going to press firmly, but not leaning in any particular way. We want to keep it from above, the pressure coming down, and then you get that lovely stamp effect. Okay, so you've got what you call the first stamp there. A secondary stamp is where you don't re-ink it, and you just come back again, and you'll get a lighter effect. So if I just bring that up, then hopefully you can see. Okay, so I've got my first stamp there, which is the ink in its true form, the true colour of the ink pad, and then a secondary, which is going to be a lighter shade because I've not re-inked. All right, so I could come back and I could do it again. If there's any left on it, you'll get a really light shade there. But you can see how you can use this one stamp, and I could make a multitude of designs by stamping all around and layering them up in different colours, different areas. So one stamp is going to create lots of fantastic designs depending on the ink pads you've got available. Now, if I was going to be doing it with a large pad on this small stamp, then it's still going to be moving the pad around, and I'm still going to be doing it more than once. Now, the reason I like to make sure I'm always doing that is because there could be a sweet spot on the ink pad. So one area could be more dried than others. So it means by moving it around that I'm not necessarily hitting the spot that's all dried out. But it also means that I know that there's going to be full coverage on the stamp. So I'm just going to again stamp out there. So I've got my true stamp in its ink pad. Secondary stamp is going to be lighter. Okay, so that's the real basic area of stamping there. So then if we change to one of the solid ones, so let's go from using the line to the solid. So we move over to this one here, and this again is where it's really important to get that coverage. So if I just pressed once and then stamped, it's likely that I'm going to get these patchy effects where the ink hasn't fully covered the stamp. So that's again why I'm constantly moving it around and getting a good coverage on the stamp. Okay, and depending on the ink that you're using, whether it be dye, pigment, the quality of the ink pad as well can have an effect. Sometimes you'll find that it doesn't fully cover the first time. So when I then press and stamp, I've got that effect. And as I said before, where the black is on the design here, that's where you get the ink, and then where the white is on there, that's where you're going to see through to the colour of your paper. All right, so again I've got the true colour, a secondary stamp is going to be lighter. Okay, so that is the real basics of stamping, complete introduction to stamping. If you're totally new, those are the sorts of things that you'll want to hear about in how to stamp. So your basics, you're going to want different size blocks depending on the different size stamps you've got. I've talked you through what the stamps look like, how to look after them as well is quite important. So in terms of when you peel them off, give them a clean. Okay, so you want to use a damp cloth if you can, give them a clean and then stick them back in the place that they came from. So a damp cloth or a wet wipe. The trouble with wet wipes is obviously, unless you're using biodegradable ones, they're not great for the environment. So if you can, just use a damp cloth each time and then clean them, pop them back, and that will help look after them. If you find that they get rather dirty because you're not cleaning them each time that you pack them away, you can get stamp cleaner. Now stamp cleaners come in different brands. Here's one that I've got here. I very rarely have to use it. It's only after a workshop when we've been rushing around and haven't necessarily cleaned the stamps regularly enough is when I would need to give them a clean using that. So that's the basics of stamping, using stamping blocks. Let's have a quick look at how you can use a stamping platform. Now here's a stamping platform, as I said before. The great thing about stamping platforms are you can repeat stamp over the top of designs. So if you find that the first time you stamped you didn't fully get the design onto the paper, you can just drop it back in the same place again, and that will then re-stamp in exactly the same space. So if I show you what I mean by that, let's just pop on here. So what I'm going to do just to start off with, I've put my paper down and I've added the magnets. Okay, so next I'm going to decide where I want to have the stamps, and I'm just going to lay them face down onto the page. Okay, so I'm just putting them where I want them on the page. Next I'm going to bring the stamping platform lid down, and I'm just going to press so that it picks up those stamps. Okay, so those stamps are sticky, which is what's lifted up the paper. So I'm just going to put the magnet back on and I'm going to lift it up. Next I'm going to ink up the stamps, so I'm going to move these things out of the way. Okay, and I'm going to ink up the stamps. So I'm going to use the little ink pad and I'm going to ink up that one there, ink up that one there, and ink up this one. Okay, so let's pretend that I didn't fully ink them up. So what I mean is that you can drop it, press it, okay, and then when you lift, they are perfect because I did ink them perfectly the first time. If I wasn't happy with that look, if it wasn't inked up perfectly, I can simply re-ink again. Okay, now this is a similar idea in that you could add a secondary layer of colour to give it a bit more depth as well, so you could do that. So again, I'm just going to come back, drop it in the same place. They haven't moved, they've stayed where they are, and I just stamp, lift it up, and it's darker this time because I've done a second layer of stamping. So as long as you don't move the paper or the stamps when you're using a stamping block, it's just going to come in exactly the same place as it was before. So when I twist that round, if I now move these, so if I move this one over to here, and if I move this one here and this one here, just remember I haven't cleaned these, so when I first press to pick them up there will be a light area where they will stamp. Okay, so can you see there's a light area because I haven't cleaned them, but you would clean them if you were doing a posh design. So let's just say now that I want to mix the colours a little bit. I'm going to do half blue, and then I'm going to do half pink. Okay, so I've done half on the stamps now, and I'm going to come back, I'm going to drop it, I'm going to press, and then I'm going to lift. Can you see how you've got that blend of the ink there? Okay, so if I wanted to reinvigorate that, I could come back on now and I can secondary layer up the pink. I haven't moved it, I've just left it in the same place. Drop it in place, press on the top, and then the pink is on the top, and it's got that blend now in between. Now, you know, that I could get much more complicated and go into blending and layering inks, and there's lots more I could do, but I want to try and keep this introductory video and keep it nice and simple for you. So hopefully, for those of you that have been asking about stamping and wanting to learn the very basics of stamping, I hope this video has been useful. So I've covered blocks, I've covered the platform, I've covered the basics of stamps and looking after the stamps. But if there's anything I've missed, any other questions you've got, please message me or let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to explain further about stamping and what you can do with your stamps. There's so much more you can do. This is really just the very introductory basics, so I hope you found it useful. Have a great day, guys. Take care. Bye bye.